Let's get right into it. Number 9. You knew too much. Back in those days, if you were a woman who seemed a little too smart for your own good, people started to get suspicious. You see, the average medieval peasant wasn't exactly a scholar. Most folks were illiterate and had the scientific knowledge of a turnip. So, if you were a woman who could read, write, or even worse, do math, people started to wonder where you got these devilish skills. Let's say your neighbor got a nasty case of the runs. You give them a natural medicine and they're back to solid stools in no time. But instead of thanking you, people start giving you the side eye. In their minds, there's no way you know all this. They think you must be getting your knowledge from the devil himself. Never mind that you might have learned it from your grandmother, who learned it from her grandmother, and so on. Nope. To them, any woman with a brain full of knowledge was suspicious. And don't even think about having a curious mind. If you started asking too many questions like, why does the sun rise and set? Or, how do birds fly? You were basically asking for trouble. In their minds, a curious woman was a dangerous woman, and a dangerous woman was probably a witch. Number 8. Owning mirrors. Back then, mirrors were rare, expensive, and considered a luxury item. So, if you had one, people started to wonder where you got the cash for such a fancy piece of glass. But it wasn't just about the money. Mirrors were believed to be portals for demons. The idea was that demons and spirits could use mirrors to enter our world. And if you owned a mirror, well, you must be inviting them over for tea and biscuits. People thought witches used mirrors for all sorts of weird stuff. Summoning demons, communicating with the dead, even trapping souls. And you know how breaking a mirror is supposed to be bad luck nowadays? Well, in the Middle Ages, a broken mirror was like accidentally releasing a bunch of demons into the world. Good luck explaining that one to your local priest. Imagine your neighbor peeking through your window and seeing you admiring your reflection. Suddenly, you're not just checking if you have spinach in your teeth. Nope, you're now officially conducting a demonic ritual. Also, some people believed that every time you looked in a mirror, a little piece of your soul got sucked inside, like a supernatural vacuum cleaner. The craziest part is that the church actually banned mirrors for a while. The higher-ups decided mirrors were just too spooky and dangerous for the average Joe to own. Number 7. You were a midwife. If anything went wrong during a birth, guess who the neighbors would blame? Yep, the poor midwife. Let's say the baby had a birthmark. That was an immediate red flag. The superstitious folks back then called it a devil's mark. It was proof that the midwife had made a deal with Satan himself. And if the baby didn't cry right away, it must be because the midwife cast an evil spell to steal its voice. Even if the birth went perfectly, and the baby was as healthy as can be, that was suspicious too. Clearly, the midwife must have made some unholy deal to ensure such a flawless delivery. Also, midwives often used herbs and potions to help ease the pain of childbirth. But to the medieval mind, those weren't just ordinary plants. They were magical ingredients straight from the devil's garden. If a baby was sickly or didn't survive, midwives were accused of swapping the real baby with a changeling, which was a demonic creature disguised as a sickly infant. Because apparently, these midwives had a secret stash of demon babies just waiting to be swapped out. To top it all off, midwives were usually older women. And we all know how the superstitious folks back then felt about older, knowledgeable women. Number 6. You played unusual music. You see, the church had a pretty tight grip on what was considered acceptable music. Anything outside of their approved playlist was seen as the devil's work. Folk music, with its lively tunes and catchy rhythms, was particularly suspect. The church saw it as a gateway to sin and debauchery. After all, if people started dancing and enjoying themselves, who knows what other wicked things they might get up to. People believed that certain tunes could summon demons, curse crops, or even make cows dance. And let's be real, nobody wants to see a cow twerking. Anything too upbeat, too catchy, or too much fun was seen as the devil's work. It gets even wilder. Some instruments were straight up banned for being too devilish. Take the fiddle, for example. Today, it's a staple in folk music, but back then, it was known as the devil's instrument. People believed that the fiddle's high-pitched sounds were actually the screams of tortured souls in hell. There was even a popular legend that the devil himself would appear at crossroads and offer to teach people how to play the fiddle in exchange for their souls. And don't even think about dancing. Dancing to unusual music was seen as a sure sign of demonic possession. You could be doing a medieval TikTok dance, and people would think you were having a supernatural seizure. Number 5. You were a wealthy widow. You see, in those days, women were supposed to be under the control of a man at all times. If you didn't have a husband, father, or brother to keep you in line, people started to get suspicious. They'd be like, how come she's got all that cash and no man to spend it for her? And if you were actually good at managing your money and estate, oh boy, that's when things got really dicey. People couldn't wrap their heads around a woman being financially savvy. They'd think she's probably using some sort of dark magic to make those numbers add up. No way a woman could handle finances without the devil's help. And it gets even worse. Let's say you decide to remarry after a while. You'd think people would be happy for you, right? Finding love again and all that? Nope. They start whispering behind your back that you must have put a spell on your new husband to make him fall for you, because apparently, the only way a widow could land a second husband is through some seriously dark magic. So what should a wealthy widow do? Well, you could give all your money to the church. That might get you off the hook, but let's be real. Who wants to do that? Number 4. You were a baker. Yeast is the magical ingredient that makes dough rise. But this was a total mystery back then. To the average medieval villager, the way dough would puff up overnight seemed like magic. They didn't know about the science of fermentation. If a baker's bread didn't rise properly, folks would start pointing fingers, claiming that evil spirits were sabotaging the baking process. I mean, obviously, the devil himself was personally invested in ruining everyone's sandwich plans, right? And if the bread rose too much, it was a sign that the baker had some supernatural help. Witchcraft was the obvious explanation. Sometimes, bread got moldy. And not just any mold, but a special type of fungus called ergot that grows on damp rye. Now, ergot isn't your average fuzzy green stuff. When consumed, it can cause some pretty trippy hallucinations. Imagine you're a baker, and one day, half the village is running around claiming they saw dragons in the sky after eating your bread. They would be like, "You've clearly bewitched us with your devil bread." Number 3. You were a weaver. Back then, weaving was seen as a mysterious and almost magical skill. Some people believed that witches could weave curses into their fabric. So if someone wore a piece of cloth you made and then got sick or had a run of bad luck, guess who they blamed? That's right, you and your enchanted weaving skills. And if that wasn't enough, there were tales of weavers using enchanted threads. These threads were said to be spun from the hair of witches, or even the devil himself. So if your fabric was too smooth or too strong, it was obviously made with some supernatural help. Weavers often worked with colors and dyes. And back then, dyeing cloth was not a simple task. It involved a mix of weird ingredients like crushed bugs, roots, and even urine. To the average medieval villager, these were all ingredients for a witch's potion. Number 2. Your soap was too effective. Back in the Middle Ages, making your own soap was a pretty common thing. You'd gather up some ashes, mix them with animal fat, and you've got yourself a nice little bar of homemade soap. So you're living in a small village, and everyone's walking around with dirt covering their faces. The streets are filled with people who look like they just lost a fight with a pig in a mud pit. But then there's you, walking through town with your sparkling clean skin. People start to wonder, how on earth does she get her skin so clean? Rumors begin to spread faster than the plague. They start saying you're using witchcraft. Because obviously the only way to achieve such a clean skin in a time where bathing was a luxury is through some sort of dark magic. Number 1. You were a lucky fisherman. So you're a fisherman living in a small village by the sea. Every morning, you head out on your boat, cast your net, and hope for the best. Most days you come back with a modest catch. It's just enough to feed your family and maybe sell a few fish at the market. But then, something strange starts happening. Day after day, you return with a boatload of fish, more than anyone in the village has ever seen. At first, people are thrilled. They line up to buy your catch, and you become the talk of the town. But as your luck continues, people start to get suspicious. They start whispering behind your back. They're wondering how a simple fisherman could suddenly have such incredible success. Some even start to say that there must be some kind of witchcraft involved. But here's where it gets even weirder. Some people believed that witches could actually transform into fish themselves. They thought that witches would shapeshift into fish, swim among the schools of fish, and lead them straight into the nets of the fishermen they favored. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.